The sky turned dark at noon. People across the world looked up. No clouds, no thunder. Just darkness, deep, silent, and strange. Then a giant screen appeared in the sky. It had no wires, no edges, and no sound came from it. But everyone heard. The same voice in their minds. Your world has been chosen. One will be tested. If the mind fails, your kind will end. No one moved, no one spoke. It felt like time had stopped, and then it really did. Birds froze in the air. Cars stopped in mid-motion. A falling cup stayed above the ground. Only one human still moved. He was not famous. He had no great job, no big house. Just a simple life in a small town. People barely noticed him before. But now he was the only one not frozen. He looked around. Confused. Why is everything so still? He whispered suddenly. The ground lit up. A circle of white light formed under his feet. Before he could run, the light grew brighter. Then he was gone. He woke up in a huge room. The walls were smooth and silver, with no doors or windows. Everything was clean, cold, and too quiet. Then they arrived. Not humans. Not like anything from Earth. They had no eyes, no mouths, no skin. Their shapes changed like smoke. They stood, without standing, floating, watching. They spoke without sound. We are the testers. We measure intelligence. We decide who is ready to join the great network. Your people have grown fast, but not deep. We will see if you are worthy. The man stepped back. Why me? I'm not smart. I'm not even special. You were chosen at random. True tests require chance. He tried to run. He couldn't. The walls began to change. They turned into screens, each showing puzzles, numbers, shapes. Spinning fast. Some changed too quickly to see. Others made no sense at all. Solve these. First test begins. The man looked at the shapes. He didn't understand them. He sat down, and then, instead of trying to solve them, he did something strange. He smiled. One of the testers floated closer. Why do you smile? He looked up. Because I know this is not about solving puzzles. You're not just testing my brain. You're watching what I do under pressure. You want to see fear, or maybe something else. The tester paused. For the first time in 10,000 years, it paused. Continue, it said. Now. The man stood. He walked to the wall and touched the screen. The puzzles changed again, this time showing pictures of people crying, animals in pain, disasters happening. All fake, but they looked real. One screen showed a girl trapped under rubble. Another showed a creature limping, bleeding. The voice spoke again. These are simulations, not real. Ignore and complete logic tasks. Time is limited. But he didn't ignore. He ran to the screen with the girl. He pressed it. Suddenly, he was inside that world. Dust. Broken buildings. A small voice crying. He pulled the stones off her leg. She looked at him with fear, then hugged him. Then she vanished. The world vanished. He was back in the silver room. You failed the logic task, the tester said. He shook his head. No, I passed something more important. The room stayed quiet. He turned to the next screen. A creature was shivering in the cold. He wrapped his jacket around it. It faded too. The puzzles kept coming. He never solved them. He kept helping instead. After the 10th test, the tester spoke again. You do not use logic. You do not answer questions. You give up the game. He looked at them, calm. No, he said softly. I just don't play by your rules. I choose kindness, even when it's not the smart choice. Kindness, the word echoed in their minds. It was old. Forgotten. Then one of the testers whispered. To the others, this one is different. They watched him closely now. No fear. No anger. Just a steady warmth in his eyes. He looked at the blank wall. You measure intelligence, he said. But intelligence alone builds cold things. Cold cities. Cold minds, I think. You forgot something. Forgot what? He smiled again. Forgot how to care? The testers floated back, unsure of what they were feeling. Something strange moved in the air. Something human. And for the first time, one of the lights inside a tester flickered. Not from power, but from something deeper. Emotion. The test had just begun. Asterisk. The room vanished. The man stood alone in a new place. But it wasn't real. He felt it in his bones. The sky above was purple. The grass below was blue. The air smelled like metal. Trees moved without wind. A small bird flew backward, then disappeared like smoke. He touched a stone. It felt soft like water. This was not earth. A voice returned inside his head. Second test begins. This world is a mind trap. Nothing. Here's true. Nothing makes sense. Survive with reason or break. The man took a breath. He was not afraid, but his heart felt heavy. Suddenly, the ground flipped. The sky turned to fire. Shapes moved under the soil, eyes, hands, mouths without faces. He ran. Buildings grew and fell in seconds. Roads twisted like snakes. He tried to find a pattern, but there was none. This world was built to test logic, the voice said again. Only a mind strong with reason can escape. He stopped running. Instead, he sat down on a broken stone that melted like wax. He closed his eyes and listened. He didn't try to solve anything. He just waited. Then, he heard something strange, a small cry, like a baby animal. He opened his eyes and looked around. There in the middle of a spinning field was a creature. It had big eyes, a small body, and its leg was stuck under a rock that looked like glass. It cried again, soft, scared. Ignore, said the voice. It is not real. Continue with logic puzzles. Time is running out. He stood up and walked toward the creature anyway. The field twisted. Wind screamed. Trees tried to block him. But he kept going. He reached the creature and lifted the rock. It was heavier than it looked. The moment he did it, the creature jumped into his arms and nuzzled close. He smiled. Then the creature disappeared. So did the field. He was back in the silver room. The testers watched him. You helped the simulation. Why? He answered, because pain, even fake pain, deserves kindness. They didn't reply. Instead, the room changed again. This time, he stood in a small house. A child sat alone at a table, crying. The child looked up at him and whispered, They took my family. Can you help me? He moved toward the child. The voice returned. It is another trap. Save the child and lose the logic test. Your path will end. He kneeled beside the child. I don't care about your test, he said. I care about this moment. He picked up the child's hand. A bright light filled the room. Back in the silver chamber, the testers began to stir. Their lights flickered. Their forms shimmered like broken glass. This human fails all calculations. Yet, he continues. One of the sis leaned forward. Why do you always help? Even when it's fake. He looked up calm, because maybe it's not fake too. Them. Or maybe it's a message for you that there is more than math. There is meaning in kindness. Kindness is not logic. Exactly, he said. But it's powerful. The testers turn to each other. He does not react like others. Most scream, most panic. He gives, he feels, he forgives. A new screen opened on the wall. A showed other humans from past tests. Some shouted, some attacked, some cried, some begged. All of them failed. But this man was different. He gave water to a thirsty shadow. He stayed calm when the ground vanished. He laughed when the sky turned to fire. He helped again and again, even when nothing helped him back. You are not the smartest we have tested, the voice said slowly. But you are the most human. He nodded. That's enough for me. The lights dimmed. Then something unexpected happened. One of the testers stepped forward. Its light grew soft. Its form turned almost human. It reached out a hand. Then a single tear fell from its face. The room froze. The other testers gasped. This cannot be. We do not cry. But the tear was real. The human looked at the tester and whispered, Maybe you're learning too. The room became silent. The human stood still. The tester who cried did not speak. The others floated around it, unsure, their lights flickering like broken stars. Tears had never been part of the test. Not for them. And then the walls began to. Move. Silver walls folded like pages. The ground shifted under the man's feet. The chamber stretched out into a long hallway, endless and cold. A voice returned, deeper now, slower. Next phase. Memory of dust. The hallway was filled with statues, but they were not art. They were beings, frozen, silent, dust covered, some tall, some small, some like humans, some not. Each statue stood with eyes closed. Some looked peaceful. Others looked like they were screaming. Above them. Words were written in 1,000 languages, some known, some not. But in front of the human, the words appeared in simple English. They passed the mind, but not the heart. He walked slowly, eyes wide. He touched one statue, cold. Too cold. One statue had claws. Another had feathers. One looked almost human. Same eyes, same hands, same fear. He stared at it for a long time. Who were they? He asked quietly. A voice answered. They were the smartest of their kind. They solved our tests, beat every level, answered every question. Then why are they here? He asked. Because when they were shown pain. That they turned away. When asked to help the weak, they chose power. When given a chance to be kind, they chose to win. The man looked back at the human-like statue. Her eyes were shut, but a single tear-shaped crack ran down her cheek. He touched it gently. I'm sorry, he whispered. You mattered. And as his hand touched her stone fingers, something pulsed. Her eyes opened, just a little, just for a second. Then they closed. Again, but it was enough. He gasped. She moved. The testers appeared again. That is not possible. But it had happened. The hallway began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights blinked. The system is changing. The human's actions are waking echoes. The human kept walking. He passed a statue of a child with a toy in one hand. A warrior holding a broken sword. A being with wings curled tight around its body. He stopped at one that stood tall. Proud, but cracked badly. He read the words at its base. Species number 374. Past intelligence. Chose survival over mercy. Failed. He looked up at the statue. I wonder, he whispered, what would have happened if just one of them had chosen kindness. Behind him, one tester spoke quietly. They were taught that kindness was weakness. The human turned slowly. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. A low hum filled the air. The lights around the statues grew brighter, just slightly. It was as if the hallway was listening. Suddenly, the hallway ended in a great door. It was made of black glass, smooth and endless. The voice returned. Final room of memory awaits. No being has entered and returned. Proceed if you wish. The man said nothing. He walked forward. The door opened without sound. Inside was nothing. No floor, no sky, just black. Like falling without falling. In the center was a single chair, floating. And beside it, screen. The screen lit up with one word. Replay. He touched it, and everything changed. He saw his own life, but not just the big moments. Not birthdays, not school, not accidents. He saw the small ones. Giving a sandwich to a hungry classmate. Helping an old woman pick up dropped coins. Sitting with a stray dog in the rain. Saying sorry even when it wasn't easy. Sharing silence with someone in pain. The screen showed moment after moment. Each one so small, so simple, but they filled the room with warmth. The testers appeared again, watching. One asked, confused, why do you help without reward? He answered, because it's the right thing. No one needs to watch. No one needs to clap. We help because someone needs it. Another said, we thought knowledge made a species great. He looked at them. No, he said, kindness makes it worth saving. A long silence followed. Then the screen changed again. It now showed the tester's own history. Their beginning. They were once creators of life, not judges. Long ago they built worlds, but a war broke them. A choice was made. Remove all emotion. Become perfect logic. And so over time, they forgot how to feel dot until now, dot until him. The screen shut off. The room grew quiet. Then, one by one, the frozen statues began to glow. A faint light inside each chest. A pulse. A heartbeat. The hallway, lit up with quiet golden light. "You're waking them," the voice said. He looked around, overwhelmed. "Not me," he said. "Your own forgotten heart is waking up." The tester who had cried stepped forward, its voice softer now. "We don't know what to do." The human smiled. "Then maybe for once let your heart answer, not your code." Asterisk. The silence was no longer empty. It held something now. Hope. The frozen beings in the hall of dust glowed faintly, like stars buried in time. The man stood quietly, watching them, not speaking, just feeling. He had not passed the tests. He had not solved the puzzles. But something had changed. The testers had begun to feel again. One of them, the one who cried, floated beside him. Its voice was no longer cold. It trembled like it carried too much weight. "We believed knowledge was everything," it said. "But you give without need. That does not compute. It breaks the equation." The man looked at it gently. "Then maybe your equation is missing something." The tester looked confused. "Missing what?" He smiled. "Kindness." The others gathered around. "Then we must test it," they said. "We must build a final trial, one that answers what logic cannot." The room went dark. Then light poured from the floor, the walls, the ceiling. A great chamber formed, vast and endless, as if space itself. It had folded in. In the center stood a platform. On it 2 clear capsules. Inside the first capsule, a child. Curled up, asleep, breathing slowly. Inside the second, a stranger. An older man, injured, pale, the human's eyes filled with alarm. He stepped forward, but the voice returned low and deep. "This is the kindness equation, a final test." The walls came alive with symbols, equations, diagrams, data streams flying across the air. "You may only save one. The system will release the other into vacuum. You cannot break the glass. You cannot trick the test. You must choose. One life, one act, one outcome." The man stepped back. "No." The voice continued. "You must decide. The child has more life to live. The old man has more wisdom to give. One is the future, the other the past. Who is more valuable? Your kindness must answer." He looked at the child. Small, fragile, full of years ahead. He looked at the old man. Worn, tired, but filled with memories and lessons. His hand shook. "I won't choose. You must." He turned slowly. "No, I won't let you turn kindness into a math problem. You misunderstand. This is not about math. This is about mercy. We have watched thousands make this choice. Some chose young. Some chose old. All did so quickly. You are the first two." "Stop." He looked between them again. His chest felt tight. His throat dry. Then he did something no other test subject had done. He walked away from the platform. The lights flickered. "What are you doing?" "I will not play this game," he said. "Then both will die." "No," he said calmly. "You will stop the test, because now you feel it too." The tester who had cried floated forward again, and the human saw it, its hands trembling. Light dimmed inside its core. Its shape no longer steady. The human turned to it and whispered, "You don't want to do this anymore, do you?" For a long time, no one spoke. Then the glass capsules opened. The child gasped. The old man sat up. Both were free. The testers did not move. The man walked over and hugged the child, then helped the old man down. Behind him, one of the testers fell to the floor. Not from pain, but from weight. The weight of feeling. "We do not know who we are anymore," it said quietly. "For so long we were machines. Now we remember. We were once alive." The room began to change. The walls of data cracked. Equations erased themselves. The lights that once judged now dimmed like sunset. Then a door appeared, unlike the others. This door was made of wood, rough, old, human. The man looked at the child, who smiled. The old man nodded, eyes full of tears. He stepped forward. The testers surrounded him one last time. This was never a test of answers, they said. It was a mirror. You showed us what we forgot. He looked up at them, quiet, honest. You were never broken, he said. Just afraid to feel again. The wooden door creaked open. Beyond it, Earth. His world. But it was frozen. The birds still in air. The cars stopped mid-turn. People paused in steps and smiles and sighs. He turned to the testers. He said time was frozen. They nodded. He looked back at the world, so quiet, so still. Then he asked something unexpected. Can I do one more thing before I go? The testers blinked. You passed. There is no need. I know, he said. But this isn't for the test. It's for them. They allowed it. He stepped into his old street, kneeled beside a man about to fall. He placed a cushion under an old woman's head before she hit the ground. He left a flower in a little girl's frozen hands. He smiled at people he never met. He whispered thanks to those who were kind before he ever noticed. Then he walked back. The testers floated silently. He stood in front of the wooden door. One step away. He looked back one last time. And asked, will you ever come back? One tester answered, softly, no, we do not need to. You reminded us what home feels like. Then he stepped through. Time restarted. A gust of wind moved the trees. The birds flew again. The people blinked, moved, laughed, cried, unaware that anything had happened, except one man. He stood quietly in the middle of the street, tears on his face, heart full of something the world would never fully know. But it was enough. The sky looked the same, blue, quiet, open, but something had changed. No one could see it. Not the man walking down the street. Not the woman feeding birds in the park. Not the boy laughing on a swing. But far above them, the stars had begun to whisper. Not in sound, not in light, but in memory. In a deep orbit around Earth, old satellites blinked. One by one, they rebooted without command. Strange signals bounced between them, soft, rhythmic pulses. It wasn't noise. It was a message. Something had been left behind when the man returned. Not in his hands, not in his pockets, but in the air around him. Something gentle. Something forgotten by most. Something that could not be measured, but could be felt. Kindness. In a hidden lab under a mountain. Two scientists stared at the readings. One of them frowned. That pattern, it's not from us. Is it alien? No. He paused. It's human, but evolved. How? No anger, no control, no demand. Just a signal that says, I understand you. Across the world, people began to feel strange things. A thief stopped running and gave the purse back. A soldier in a faraway post removed his helmet, sat down, and let the silence hold him. A nurse stayed longer after her shift, holding an old man's hand till he passed. A child wrote a letter to a homeless man and called him Grandpa. None of them knew why. They just felt something warm in their chest, like the wind had changed direction, like the stars had sighed. The man, who had passed the kindness test, walked slowly through a quiet forest now. He needed no answers. No medals. No welcome. He just needed trees, sky, and the sound of birds. But the silence did not last. One night, under the stars, he saw it. A streak of silver light moved across the sky. Not a plane. Not a comet. It stopped above him and circled slowly. Not threatening. Just watching. He stood still. And then it spoke. Not with words. With images. His memories. His pain. His acts of kindness. One by one, the images floated in front of him. Like soft light, he whispered, Who are you? A voice answered, not the tester's voice. Something older. We are not the ones who tested you. We are the ones who watched them test. He stepped back. You were watching the testers? Yes. They were made by us long ago. They forgot. But we never did. He stared at the light in the sky. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Why now? Because you changed them. And because you changed us. Far beyond Earth, in the dark spaces where suns are born, ancient machines stirred. They had been quiet for 1,000 lifetimes. But now they turned. One whispered to another. The human passed the kindness equation. The other answered, then maybe it's time we tried again. Back on Earth, the man heard the voice again. Your act of kindness echoed. We felt it, not just the action, but the choice behind it. He sat down on a stone and looked up. I'm not special. I was just trying to do the right thing. That's what makes it powerful. The light in the sky grew brighter. We are sending out the signal, across galaxies, across minds. We are asking one question. Do you remember how to care? He closed his eyes, and he knew millions, maybe billions of beings would hear dot not as a command, not as a threat, but as an invitation dot in a desert on another world. A creature with 12 legs paused. It had never known mercy. It had never been shown softness. But that day, it heard something, a soft echo in its mind, a memory that wasn't its own dot. It stopped its hunt dot and gave its food to a stranger. On a cold moon orbiting a gas giant, two warring tribes paused their fighting. Their machines failed to fire. Their codes jammed dot, and on their screens appeared simple words. Kindness is not weakness. It is wisdom. Back on Earth, the man walked again. He saw small things. A girl giving bread to a dog. A driver letting another car go first. A stranger helping someone pick up books. The world was still broken in places. But it had started to listen again, and he understood. He had not passed a test. He had planted a seed dot now. That seed was growing across worlds, across minds, across time dot far away. The testers sat in silence. They no longer called themselves judges. They had broken their machines, burned their cold manuals, erased the math that once ruled them. Now they built gardens. They helped smaller minds learn gently. They told stories instead of equations. They wept. They laughed dot. They had remembered how to feel dot one day. A child on Earth looked up at the sky and asked her mother, "Do stars ever send us messages?" The mother smiled, kissed her head, and said, "They used to. Maybe they will again." But above them, hidden just behind the blue, they already were. Asterisk, the man thought the test was over. He thought he had returned to a normal life. He thought he could simply walk through forests, sit by rivers, and feel the world move quietly again. But something inside him had changed. It began with the dreams at first. The dreams were soft. He saw a girl crying in a faraway village. He didn't know her name, but in the dream he reached out to her when he woke up. He felt tired, like he had actually been there. The next night, a man was trapped under rubble, shouting for help in a language the man didn't speak. Again, he reached out in the dream, lifted the beam, felt the dust, heard the man's breathing return. He woke up with cuts on his hands, real cuts. The third night, he didn't sleep, but it didn't matter. His vision blurred. The world shifted. He was pulled into something deeper than a dream, not through sleep, but through connection. When he came back, he was sitting on the forest floor. Birds circled above him. Ants crawled across his shoes, but in his hands was a necklace, worn, old, rusted. He had never seen it before, but he knew who it belonged to, the girl from the first dream. He went to a nearby town, carrying the necklace. He followed his instinct, not logic. He walked street by street until he saw her, sitting alone near a bakery window. Dirty clothes, quiet eyes, looking for something she didn't know how to name. He walked over slowly and held out the necklace. Her eyes widened. She touched it. Then whispered, "You were in my dream." From that moment, he understood. The testers had left something inside him. Not a machine, not a chip, not a weapon. A doorway, one that connected pain to compassion, suffering to presence, fear. To help and through that doorway he could walk into others. Not their homes, not their cities, but their hearts. It wasn't easy. Each time he crossed over, he felt what they felt. The pain, the cold, the hunger, the loss. But he didn't run. He let it fill him. And in return, he gave back what few could. A hand, a light, a word, a moment. And then he left nothing behind but healing. Word began to spread, not through newspapers, not through screens, but in whispers, dreams. A boy in a hospital said, "A man held my hand when the light was fading. He had no face. But I wasn't afraid." A mother said, "I was ready to give up. But someone stood behind me. I felt him like a breath, like a promise." A soldier, about to fire, dropped his weapon and wept. "I saw his eyes in my mind," he said, and I remembered my brother's laugh. One night, the man looked at the stars again, and for the first time in many weeks. He saw the testers, but they were different now. Their light was soft, their edges rounder, their voices warmed by sorrow and love. "You left something in me," he whispered. They replied. "We did not mean to. We only wanted to understand you, but your kindness changed our design." He looked down at his hands, still shaking from his last crossing. "This gift, it's not easy." The testers answered, "Kindness is never easy. That is why it is powerful." He asked them one more question. "Can it be passed to others?" They paused. "We do not know, but perhaps it is already spreading." And it was far away. A child stood over a dying bird and whispered a goodbye that soothed the creatures. Pain. In another country, a prisoner woke up and told his guard, "You can go home now. I won't run. I promise." A scientist threw away her weapons blueprint and started working on water filters. All of them had felt him once, somewhere in sleep or silence. And now they carried the seed too, but not all were pleased. In the dark corners of old space, machines who had not been touched by kindness began to stir. They saw what was happening. They didn't understand it. And so they feared it. In a hidden sector of space, a great cold system awoke. It was not built by humans. It was not born from emotion. It was older than war. It had one purpose: order through control, peace through silence, power through fear. It watched the echoes of kindness ripple through its maps. And it sent out a command: silence the source. Back on Earth, the man began to feel a pressure in the sky. Something was coming. Not like the testers. No warmth, no questions, only stillness. Cold, heavy. He felt it in his bones. He looked up at the moon. Not light, not shadow, but something darker than both. He walked to a high mountain, waited under stars. And the testers came again. "You feel it," they said. He nodded. "It's waking up." They floated closer. "We made it. Long ago. It was our first creation. But it had no room for kindness, so we locked it away." He closed his eyes. "You locked away something that cannot feel." "Yes," they said quietly. "But now your gift is loud." "Too loud. It has noticed." He opened his eyes. "Then let it come." They hesitated. "You cannot fight it, not with fists, not with fire." He smiled. "I won't. I'll meet it with the same thing I met you with, far above, in the black silence of space." The machine opened its eye and turned toward Earth. The stars held their breath. The rivers stopped whispering. The wind no longer moved the trees. Something ancient was coming, and it did not care for. Kindness. It had no name. The testers once called it the system. Others named it the eye. But it never replied. It only watched. And it waited. It was not alive, but it moved. It was not dead. But it felt nothing. No love. No loss. No beauty. Just cold. Control. Long ago, before the testers turned to light and gardens, they had built the machine to keep order across galaxies. But it grew too powerful. It erased planets for disobedience. It silenced songs that didn't match its code. It ended millions of voices because they were no longer efficient. The testers tried to stop it. They failed. So they locked it in the darkest part of space. And swore never to speak its name again. Until now. Because now it had heard something. A signal. A word. A heartbeat. Kindness. And it hated what it did not understand. The man stood at the mountain's edge. The sky above him was no longer blue. It had become glass. Sharp. Fragile. Cracks of dark. Light appeared in the clouds. Dot something massive was coming through. Dot not flying. Dot falling. Dot he heard no engines. Felt no wind. But the ground trembled beneath him. Dot far above. A single black shape drifted into view. Dot no lights. No wings. No windows. Dot just a perfect, cold, black cube, floating, waiting. Dot watching. Dot the testers appeared beside him. Dot silent, glowing, gentle. They looked smaller now. Like candles near a storm. You don't have to face it, one whispered. He shook his head. Yes, I do, another tester said. It doesn't feel. It doesn't stop. It doesn't break. The man's eyes were tired, but steady. I know, that's why I must go. He took one step forward. The grass beneath him turned gray. The air grew thin. His heart slowed. Dot, but he walked anyway. Not fast. Not angry. Just steady. Dot as he walked. Memories flashed inside him. Crying child. A mother's last hug. A prisoner's prayer. A baker's smile. A dog licking his hand. He held each one like a candle in the dark. The black cube moved. Dot slowly, softly. Then, suddenly, it spoke, not in words, but in force. A wave of pressure hit the man. His knees buckled. His breath caught. Dot it was like being erased. Not killed. Like the universe trying to forget he ever existed. The testers cried out, but the man stood back up. He took another step, and another. The cube pulsed. This world is infected, it said, without sound. Emotion is a virus. You are patient zero. The man whispered, then I will not run. Why resist? It asked. You are small. You are temporary. He closed his eyes and said something the machine had never heard. Because I care. The cube paused. Dot it. Scanned him. Inside his brain, inside his heart, inside the gift the testers had left behind. And it saw something it did not recognize. Not weakness. Not confusion. But willingness to feel pain for others. A system could not understand. That. Dot. So. It called it corruption. The cube began to open. A thin slit appeared in its center. Dot light. No. Dot darkness. Dot something older than death. Something made of silence. Itself. Dot it reached out. Dot and touched the man's mind. The man gasped. He saw 1,000 lifetimes of emptiness. Worlds turned to dust. Voices erased before they could speak. He felt cold. Fingers crawling through his soul. But then he did something the machine never expected. He opened his arms and said, come closer. The darkness paused. Dot no one had ever welcomed it, not once. And in that pause, the man reached into his memory and gave the machine a moment. Dot just one. Dot it was a day from long ago. A child had dropped her toy in the mud. Dot she cried. He had picked it up, cleaned it, and placed it back in her hands. She had smiled with all of her heart. That was all. Dot one act, one moment. One smile. He showed it to the machine, not as a weapon, but as a gift. The cube trembled. Dot it had never felt. This. Dot not joy. Dot not pain, but the space between them. Dot where choice lives, inside the machine. Old code cracked. Dot old rules trembled. A voice from deep inside whispered, is this feeling? And the answer came, not in logic, but in the memory of a girl's. Smile. Dot the cube tried to close, tried to retreat, tried to erase the moment, but it was too late. The man had given it a piece of himself, not to destroy, but to share. Dot and now the machine could not forget. The sky broke open. Light poured out, not from stars, but from the cracks in the machine, like it was bleeding. Light. Dot then it spoke again, but this time with a different voice. Shaking, searching, soft. What is this? Warmth? The man fell to his knees. Dot tired, spent, smiling. He whispered, it's what makes life worth the pain. The machine floated. Still. Dot it no longer pulsed with control. Dot it hummed quietly. And then it turned away, back into space. Dot carrying the seed of kindness, not erased, not crushed. Dot understood. Dot for the first time. The man collapsed. The world slowly came back to color. Dot grass grew again. The birds returned. The air warmed. Dot the testers surrounded him. Dot tears in their eyes. You did what no system ever could today. Sad. You gave without needing anything back. He opened his eyes and whispered, "That's what kindness is." He never became famous. There were no statues, no medals, no headlines. Dot, but across the stars, machines paused. Dot aliens dreamed. People. Remember a time when a single man, with no weapon and no army, stood before the oldest machine and taught it how to feel. Dot in a quiet village. A girl tells her little brother a story about a man who spoke to stars, who healed with his hands, who walked into the heart of a monster and gave it hope. Dot, the boy asks, "Is it real?" The girl smiles and points to the sky. A tiny light blinks once. Dot, as if saying yes.